Hello and welcome back to today's episode of Costa Rica Travel and Living Podcast. I am your host today, Jessica Licky, Senior Travel Consultant at Namu Travel and the Costa Rica Vacations local agency. Today we are with Jennifer Floyd. She is a Canadian native, but moved here to Costa Rica and has family here as well. So we're going to talk about all things Canada versus Costa Rica living, kind of what made her or helped her make the switch. And so we're super excited and looking forward to hearing from you. So without further ado, let's dive on in. Hey,
Hi
Jen.
guys. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm super excited.
Awesome. No, we are stoked to have you here. I think it's always interesting to hear from people that have lived in different countries and have landed here in Costa Rica and love it. So happy to have you.
I'm glad to be here. I'm super stoked that you had asked me to be here, and I'm more excited to see what your viewers are here to kind of learn from me, and hopefully they want to come and visit us here in Costa Rica or even move down here.
Awesome. Why don't you start by telling us how you ended up in Costa Rica? I know that you had mentioned previously to me that your mom is Costa Rican. So tell me what that looked like and kind of how you ended up here in Costa Rica.
So I grew up in Canada, so I was born and raised there. My dad is Canadian. I came down here pretty much like once a year with my mom to kind of visit the family, get to know them a little bit more. um why I always kind of wanted to live here. My mom obviously didn't allow me. I was too young and schooling and everything. She was like, you need to come back. We went to Canada for that specifically. So um kind of when I turned 18, I still had it in my mind, but I was still living and studying in Canada. Then when COVID kind of hit, everything was virtualized. I was always home. I was working at a restaurant, and my mom had told me that my grandmother was really sick and that she was really wanting to be here. When she kind of mentioned that, like a little bulb clicked in, a little light, and I was like, I really want to go down there, and like I really want to finish my studies. I had like a serious talk with my mom about it, and she had agreed to let me come down here for like a certain amount of time. And then it kind of ended up just like evolving into me living here. Not gonna lie, she wasn't really happy about it. She really wanted me to come back. But over the years and over, like I've been here for more than 5 years now, and she had come to the decision that it was the best decision for me. I definitely feel like personally, I have evolved a lot more. I'm living alone. You get a little bit more of a sense of responsibility. So she's really happy with the way I've gone about life, and she's actually coming down here to live for a couple months. So she's really happy that I'll be here. And then she has my older brother in Canada. So she has like both of both worlds, I guess.
Nice. Would you say that your upbringing in Canada, although you had a Tika or Costa Rican mom, was pretty like you grew up very similar to your neighbors or friends in school? Or would you say that you had some sort of different cultural upbringing because you had a parent from another country?
I think it was a little bit different. I definitely think it was a little bit different. Food wise, my mom always had a lot of like Costa Rican traditional foods at home. So a lot of my friends would come over and be like, "What's this?" There was like a traditional like dish that she made a lot for breakfast, which is pinto, and you don't really eat that back in Canada. So a lot of friends were like really happy with like having different things to try. And then based like culturally, I definitely think I had a couple different family values. Like it's a little bit different. Being Costa Rican, family and God are super important. So that was definitely implemented in my life. And then a lot of my other friends were probably had a little bit of like a different view sense or like view of life. So I definitely think there was like a little bit of things that were different. Being like a Canadian in Costa Rica, it's definitely different. My friends, like my cousins or friends, had like their whole life a lot more freely. Being out like on our little town, it's mostly family, so you'd see kids all the time on the streets playing after school. They'll walk home like alone. So it's things that you like in Canada like you could never do. So that was definitely something different as well.
And I think the little, so for those listening, Jen and I live like 20 minutes from one another, and Jen lives in a super cute, small town here in the mountains, like 50 minutes outside of La Fortuna. Jen, for the people that are listening, what like help someone who's never been to San Vicente before, help them picture kind of what it's like.
So I like to compare it a lot to like Monteverde, I would say. It's definitely a cloud forest. You're definitely high up in the mountains. It's very like an authentic traditional town. So you'll have like the señoras, which are traditional older ladies that have like their day-to-day life. It's a bunch of farmers that normally do dairy farms. So you definitely have like a old style life here. Most people wake up before like the crack of dawn to kind of get up, and then they'll go to bed before like the lights even come on for like the streets. So it's definitely like a different lifestyle, I would say. But I personally really like it. The views from here, like on a normal summer day, are amazing. You actually get to see like the four different volcanoes if you really have like a lucky day to see that. So like it's one of those places that you come and you have like full tranquility.
Yeah, and it's like Monteverde, but it's much smaller. Like,
Much
do you know what the
smaller.
population of San Vicente, like up top where you live, do you know what the population is there?
I want to say like it's between like 100 people, maybe like 11. It's definitely super
Very.
small.
And of those 100 people, how many of them are family to you?
I would say more than half. It's definitely. I'll walk around and everyone will be like, "Hi, Jen."
Right. And so I
Every
think coming from Montreal, Canada, right, where there's tons and tons and tons and tons of people, and it's kind of hard to stand out to a super small rural mountain town of Costa Rica where more than half of the population is your family. That's a huge change.
I mean, Jess, you can't let me lie about it. Even our town, like our where we live, if you walk around, everyone knows who you are. They're like, "Oh, that's the Canadian," or "That's Jess. Jess is married to like this person." Like everyone pretty much knows each other, and it's like a very big community, but small at a sense because just everyone knows each other.
So what would you say was like a hard change or something that perhaps you weren't ready or thinking of about moving here? Like what was the difficult, whether it be like a culture shock or some sort of lifestyle change that you experienced when you moved here full time?
Um, Honestly, I feel like culturally, my mom really had me like know a little bit more. Like since I always came down here like once a year, like I really didn't get like a shock about that. I think that the only thing that really surprised me was like everyone was so united. Like I feel like there is like a sense of family, even if they're not even your family or their friends, you kind of felt like you were a part of it. Everyone's kind of always asking how you are, if you're okay, if there's anything that you need. My aunts call me every single day to make sure that I'm having lunch, because they sometimes with this job you kind of forget to have like a bite for lunch. So they'll call me, make sure that I'm eating, or they'll make sure that I'm okay or I'm sleeping okay. So it's definitely something that I never had before in Canada. The only thing that was like the only person that was really on me was like my mom. Here it's like pretty much everybody.
And it's cool, right? Like it's a different. I remember when I first moved here from corporate America, I when I first moved to Costa Rica to work at the Springs and Peace Lodge, I was the only non-Costa Rican manager. I lived on site, so I was there 24/7. And like if one day I had a cough or a cold, like the cocineras from the kitchen would come and bring me like a fresh ginger tea or olla de carne soup. And there really is a great sense of community. And I think Costa Rica is known internationally for being one of the sweetest, kindest communities of people. And it's really
Honestly,
hard sometimes to explain that to people.
no, for sure. And I was actually I was listening to something the other day. It was like a podcast about like the friendliest countries, and Costa Rica was named like rated number 1. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna take out the Canadian in me and say Canadian was rated number 5. So, I'm definitely from like the two friendliest countries here.
Yes. Well, we know that you are very sweet, so that makes sense. Um, Tell me about like what kind of traditions do you guys celebrate like with your mom's family that perhaps with your dad's family you never did? Or just like some daily um, habits or traditions culturally that like how do those two cultures differ a little bit?
So definitely, when I first came to Costa Rica, there was like you would do this before Christmas. It would be like make tamales. It's just basically a type of how would you explain this? They put like into like these leaves a type of batter, and then they put like chicken and rice and corn, no corn, carrots and whatnot. And so doing that with all the señoras of our like my small town was something that I've never like been a part of. And just like being in like the kitchen with your I would say wooden stove top, the kind of smell of the wood, being there talking with talking with them and having those experiences with them. They'll be talking about like when the town wasn't even made out of like cement pavement. It was all out of like rocks. So coming into the town of San Vicente would take not 15 minutes, but like an hour to get here. Yeah, so or like if they were going to school, and like my family in general was like at the very top of San Vicente. Well, there's a hotel there actually in like Now and Day, which is San Vicente Hideaway. They were living right there, and they would walk to school, which is like the school really close to where I live now, where the church is. And sometimes they wouldn't have shoes because like they were like in that time there wasn't really any of those types of things. And if you were going into town, like where Ciudad Quesada is, you would go in a tractor with like the person that would take the milk to the town. So it was those types of things that you're like, wow, I would never have thought about that, or never have I ever like experienced something like that. So that was like one of the first things, like just kind of talking with them and getting those experiences from them was like, wow, I've never thought about that. Or my mom's never told me about that. I didn't realize that she had like such difficulties like in her early day life. Um, and then the other thing was like Semana Santa. Semana Santa is like one of the biggest, I would say, Holy Week here. And there's so many different activities that my town does that I never, ever, ever got to experience in Canada. And just having like that community, that sense of like being within all together and to have that celebration is like is a whole other experience, and definitely was like something very different. I would say those two were like the biggest, I would say, shocks to me. And then in Canada, you're always celebrating. I would say like in October, it's Halloween, there's Thanksgiving. Um, so there was types of things that I got to experience there that most people don't really get to do it here. Uh, but having those two traditions in life was something I was like, wow, I never really thought of like any of that or having that experience. So definitely something I
And I
really
think,
like.
yeah, that's awesome. And I think too, there in the States or Canada, obviously there was a time and a generation that had things a little bit more simple. It was more rural. There wasn't as much infrastructure. Things were a little bit simpler, but it feels so much further removed, like so much more distant. We're here in Costa Rica. This was like your mom. This wasn't even like your grandma or your mom's mom. This was your mom who was living this way, like not that long ago. And so I think that's always a nice reminder too. And it's honestly one of the reasons people will ask me why I still live here. And I'm like, it's simpler. There's less options for everything. Things just feel less complicated. And it's just a simpler way of life. I'm not sure if you share that feeling, but we only have 5 or 6 restaurants, to pick from, and they're all delicious. And from where we live, you can get to either one of the coasts or to, San Jose City or even Liberia, within 3 or 4 hours, really, to so many different parts of the country. And so it just feels a lot more simple. And I think that's kind of the draw, at least for me, to why people stay here or why they immigrate here. And it's because there's not so much of this noise and a distraction like there is, in the North, North America, Canada.
No, for sure. I think definitely one of the things that I felt different was like a certain feeling, I would say. In Canada, I was always stressed. My life, like my day-to-day life was basically get up, go to like study, go to work, come back home, make sure that everything's clean. I would live with my dad, so I would cook him dinner, and then go to bed and kind of reset. Here you have a little bit different. So you would be like, you wake up, go for a walk. I have like the potential to do that since it's a small town. There's not a lot of like people or cars. So go for a walk. I would take my dog, Junior. And honestly, everyone would say, "Hi, Junior," and they would like completely ignore me. So that's great. And then I would come home, work, I don't know, maybe like work on my like garden outside, come back in, have lunch, work. So like it's definitely something that you would say like it's a little bit different. Like you're not kind of going with a routine. Every day is different. And then it's super like it's so simple. Like if you want to go out with some friends, most of my friends live like in town where I live. So they'll come over, we'll have like a cheese board, some wine, maybe watch a movie. And so like it's types of things that like if I were in Canada, all my friends were always busy working or they had like other priorities. Here I feel like they take life a little bit more as a sense of like um you don't know if you're going to wake up the next day. So like let's take advantage of today. In Canada, it was more like we have so much time. I'm going to wait until I'm 65 and pensioned to like do the things that I want to do. So I feel like it's just like a change of lifestyle, I would say.
I remember when I first started working at Peace Lodge, and I would say goodbye to people in the afternoon, after, at hotels, of course, there's more rigid schedules and things like that. But I remember leaving work at night and I would say to my coworkers, like, bueno, chao, buenas noches, see you tomorrow. And they would respond, hasta mañana, si Dios quiere. And I
Yeah.
would, which translates to like, I'll see you tomorrow if it's God's will. And I remember that being kind of like the first culture shock of like, what? Like you'll maybe come tomorrow if it's God's will to work. But to what you're saying is like it's very true. They live the local Costa Rican people, at least in our area, do seem to take life just less seriously and live for today and spend more time with each other. And it is definitely a different culture. We also don't live in, we don't live in or on the beach. And we don't live in towns where there are tons of expat communities either. So I don't think we can really speak to that too much. But, here in Ciudad Quezada and San Vicente, how many extranjeros or expats do you think there are?
I mean, I'm just surprised that I only met you a couple years ago and you've been here for like the longest time. And I was like, I had no idea that there is like, I don't know, another North American here, which is so funny because normally people would be like, oh, there's a Canadian that lives in town. Like, so like that was something that was
Yep,
really funny to me.
it's
But I'm
true.
glad.
I bet there's 20, and that's probably a lot. We just don't live in an area where there's tons of immigrants. Some are expats because it's mostly local families. And if you don't really speak Spanish fluently here, there's not a ton of resources. Um, but it's very cool. What would as a travel consultant, we constantly get the questions and inquiries of people that want to move or retire here in Costa Rica. What would you say to them? As someone who has lived most of your life in another country but has roots here in Costa Rica, what would you tell someone or suggest to someone that wants to or says that they want to move here to Costa Rica one day?
Let's say like I had this conversation with my dad when we were thinking of having him come down here to get him like pensioned here. what he what I say is like the life is a lot more simpler, as you would say. So like if you're not looking to have like a corporate 9 to 5 type life, or if you're looking to not have like I definitely think it's different. I definitely think you're going to need to kind of change your expectations and be like, I'm not going to be able to find, I don't know, a mall, like a super big mall here that has like everything I need. As if you were in the States, you can kind of go anywhere and find anything that you need. Amazon takes forever to get here. So like it's those types of things, like a lot of
The
commodities that you're maybe used
conveniences.
to.
Mhm.
Uh-huh, you're not able to get that here, but you're still able to kind of live a like more simpler life. If you're, I don't know if you've ever seen like, I know you have, Jess, you kind of recommended me, but if you're looking to like eat a lot more healthier or if you're looking to kind of live off of like what you make, or live a little bit more simpler, you can definitely do that here. I've known so many people that have like in their backyard, Jess is one of them, that has so like I don't know, like rosemary outside, oregano outside, just to kind of not have to buy that at a grocery store. My aunts and uncles, they all have lettuce or cilantro. They all produce that, so like you don't really have to go out and buy that at market or a grocery store. So you're definitely eating a lot healthier here. You're definitely living a lot more simpler. You're definitely like not having the amount of stress if you were to like living in a big city. So I would say like if someone were looking to come to Costa Rica, I definitely would want them to know that lifestyle is very different. You're definitely gonna feel the change, but if you're totally up for it, it was the best decision I've ever made, and I honestly don't feel like I can go back to Canada and live there again. I feel like I would be super stressed. So it's definitely something different. But if you're ready for it, do it. I don't even think you, Jess, like would want to go back to the States at any time soon. Like I don't think that's in like your vision plan.
It's interesting because first of all, the sound of a simpler life is attractive to a lot of people, but the practice is actually not that easy, especially if you're used to a life full of conveniences, like a lot of people are in the States. And so I think it depends on what you truly envision your life looking like in the future. Um, because like you said, if you find something that you really want on Amazon, it'll get here in 3 weeks. It's just my husband's birthday and I bought something for him. It took almost 3 weeks. It was like 2 weeks and 3 days or something for it to get here. So the convenience here is not common. Of course, if you live in San Jose, you can easily get to City Mall or Multiplaza and Escazú, or of course the resources. We don't, not all of us live in rural mountain areas. So it is possible. But I always like to say, like, the idea of a simple life is not as easy to practice if you're used to a life of more luxury or conveniences. And also, I would say you're completely right. If the idea of, especially here in, this isn't quite the Central Valley, but here, like Salcedo, San Vicente, Ciudad Quesada, where it's a little bit cooler and a little bit higher in elevation, we can grow so much stuff here. So, lettuce, tomatoes, if going to the local farmer's market once or twice a week is interesting to you, it can be a really great life. I always recommend, if someone's looking to move here, come visit. And don't just come and stay at the Four Seasons and the W for a week. Come and see the Central Valley, come and see La Fortuna, go and see Monteverde. Come and experience different locations, because this country, although very, very, very small, when compared to even other Latin American, Central American countries, has so many different like subcultures depending on where you're at, right? Living in Uvita is very different than living in San Vicente, which is very different than living in Guanacaste or, Papagayo. And so going and experiencing these places, meeting the locals. If your kids only speak English, do you have is there a school that they can go to? Granted, I think that almost in in a lot of communities here, there are some really great bilingual schools, but right, how much of a shock is that going to be for your kids if they don't speak any Spanish? And so that's always what I say to people is like, come and do a little bit of your own research. And, each place kind of has its own vibe. Come and do that. And also realize that although the idea of a simple life sounds great to a lot of people, it's not always an easy thing to put into practice. But I think you're right. This country has so many things to offer. My husband and I are head over heels with our little mini garden in Huerta here. And we're figuring out how we can terrace a little bit more land to maybe put some lettuce in here too. But there's plenty of great things about the country. Tell us a little bit about what is pura vida to you? What does that mean? What does that feel like? What does that look like?
I think that would go more towards the type of people that you would see here. I always tell like my travelers that are like, why should I go to Costa Rica? Because you can really find like volcanoes in Panama or in Nicaragua. Why should I go to Costa Rica? And I always think that Costa Rica, in a sense, is an amazing country. You have amazing views, you have wildlife, you have biodiversity. But what is that like small little thing that makes Costa Rica Costa Rica? And it's the people, the staff, the amount of love that they'll give you, even like just knowing you for 5 minutes, having those tour guides talk to you about their life or talk to you about the wildlife that's here. Everyone is so like I say they'll give you 110% every single time. So why come to Costa Rica? For the pura vida lifestyle. It's the type of people that you'll find here. So for me, that's what essentially pura vida means. And kind of going back to what we said, they take life like day by day, because they don't really know if the next morning they're going to wake up sick in bed and not be able to come back up or like whatnot. So they take everything day by day, and so they'll give you that 110% every single time.
I think so too. I mean, you look at, I just built a house here. It's not cheap. And so people are like, oh, you're building a house in a third world country. I'm sure it's super cheap. And it's like, yeah, I wish.
I
But you
wish.
look at the expenses. It's not a cheap country to live in. You look at expenses of living. Of course, you can rent cheaper, but if you want to build a house, it's not cheap. But there's this thing that doesn't show up, right? On like a P&L statement or doesn't show up on paper even. And that's this culture of pura vida. Everyone kind of gets along here. Of course, there's, exceptions, but I'd say in general, people get along and it's a friendly community and it doesn't feel as tense in certain like social situations and things like that. Um, than in other countries, or at least in the US from my experience. So there is this just like relaxed, everyone loves everyone type of vibe, which is pura vida, and they just don't take things as seriously. I live it with my husband. Sometimes things will be, I'll get super worked up about something, and my husband's like, it's okay. So we'll just fix it. Or like that has a fix. Or,
It'll
like things
pass.
perhaps that we're just so used to like getting worked up about, or the cable guy was supposed to come yesterday and he, just didn't come and didn't let anyone know that he wasn't going to come because that's super common here. And you're like, oh man, it's so difficult to get. One time our dryer was broken and we called 4 different people to come and try and fix our dryer and we waited like a week and nobody would even get back to us. I'm like, sure. And Harold's like, guess what? We got some sun outside for now. Like, it's fine. Like there is this, and pura vida can be explained in so many different ranges, right? From like personal to it also exists in business as well. Um, and so, but it is one of the special things that makes this country so desirable. And it's, I think the reason why a lot of people stay is because it's just so relaxed. Um, awesome. Anything else you want to share with people that are possibly thinking about moving to Costa Rica, either from Canada or from North America in general? Anything that you wish you would have known before you came here, or any advice you can give?
Honestly, I feel like this country is super welcoming and super open. Um, when I first got here, I started a business of like doing English classes, and kind of like everyone was like reposting, like kind of recommending me. I had like so many students come to me at like out of the blue, and it was like one of those things that they'll give you the opportunity to start your own business. They'll give you the opportunity to be part of like their family. So they'll kind of like embrace you with open arms if you're willing for it. Like if you're willing to like put in the work and do it and come down here and even try it, um, then just know that people are going to come and embrace you. I think Jess is probably one of those people that also know that type of feeling that when you first got here, it was kind of like, I'm going to another country. I don't know absolutely like no one here. And then I know that you had a adoptive like family that was kind of like a host family, I think it was, and they like embraced you with open arms. So like definitely does reflect the type of people that there are here. So if you're willing to kind of put in that work, know that there are going to be some challenges along the way, and know that Costa Rica is one of those countries that is a little bit complicated, but it's so worth it. So I think that if you're willing to do it, do it. If you're really like into, so my brother, he's complete opposite of me. He would never ever come and visit. Like he would never come and move to Costa Rica. And he says it's just because it would be a huge change for him. So you have like two different personalities coming from the same household, and it was like you definitely need to be a certain type of people to kind of risk it. But if you're willing to, I do 100% recommend it.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for sharing everything that you have today. And if anyone following along wants to reach out to Jen, either to plan a trip or maybe their first trip down here before possibly moving or retiring down here, we will leave her contact information and social media pages here below. If you guys are loving our podcast, please, please, please follow along, give us a like, share on Spotify or YouTube, wherever you're watching and listening, so you never miss an episode. So subscribe, share, give us a like, a thumbs up. It's really appreciated. And if you want to reach out to Jen, we will leave her information here below. So thank you so much for joining us today, Jen. I think it was really beneficial and really nice to hear from you and your local perspective on the Canadian Tika life.
No, thank you, Jess, for inviting me. It was honestly super exciting. I'm super happy to be here, and I can't wait to see it on all social medias.
Awesome. Well, we will be in touch, and ciao for now.
Ciao for now.